it's not enough just to want to be successful or to wish. You actually literally have to make changes in your external world to support that. You know, if your environment doesn't support your future self or the goals that you're pursuing, you're not going to do it.
Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, this is Augustino. For many people starting out either as entrepreneurs or making the switch to the world of real estate, we often need to overcome the limiting beliefs about our personality traits, which can be quite overwhelming. The key is to having a purpose so big and inspiring that it transforms your entire life in pursuing it. Well, today's guest has a deep understanding of how people overcome and perceive these beliefs and willpower as well, and has also shown that they're quite wrong. Aside from being a successful entrepreneur, he is the best-selling author of Willpower Doesn't Work. He has delivered 2 TED Talks with millions of views on that very subject. He's also been featured on Forbes, Fortune, CNBC, Cheddar, Big Think, and many other channels, and has helped millions of people break free from the shackles of what they perceive as permanent personality. With all that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Benjamin Hardy to the show. Hey, Benjamin, thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely, my man. Happy to be with you.
Yes. Well, if you like what Benjamin has to say, you can reach him via his website at benjaminhardy.com. And of course, if you like our content, please don't forget to leave a comment and rate the show. And finally, text the word freedom to 202-410-4202. You'll get our free ebook, The Bulletproof Guide to Raising Capital. All right, Ben, let's get into starting off with your background. How did you get into the world you're currently in today?
Probably primarily, well, it has a lot to do with many events that have happened in my life, but mostly I think it started with my parents getting divorced. I was age 11, and the divorce really kind of threw a loop for everyone in my family. My father became an extreme drug addict, and yeah, it just was crazy times. I'm the oldest of 3 boys, and basically we just were in a chaotic situation from age 11 until basically I was age 20. No clue how I graduated high school, 0 stability in my life. I was pretty much just coping, trying to figure it out. And I've talked to you about this earlier, but the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, I reread it twice during COVID-19, and it really kind of explained to me my situation back then. Basically what Frankl said in that book is that when a person loses hope and purpose for their future, the present becomes extremely meaningless, unbearable. And that's really where I was at. Like, because of all the stuff I had gone through, I just kind of didn't really have a sense of purpose for my life, no direction, was just kind of defined by my past, which can happen with trauma. So I kind of wanted to figure that out. So I connected back with my faith and ultimately decided to go do a 2-year church mission, which is the thing that changed my life. That's the thing that got me into a new environment. I had a new role. I had a new purpose. And I was in a place where I could actually learn, and I was exposed to all sorts of stuff I had never seen before, was serving people in terrible situations, reading lots of good books, journaling. I mean, that mission experience changed my life. That's what got me interested in writing. That's what led me to wanting to be an author. That's what got me into psychology and just really wanting to know more and more what the heck's going on with people. Because I mean, even me, when I was on that mission, I saw people in way worse situations than I'd ever been. And just wondering, why do people thrive and why do some people, or why do a lot of people just struggle? So yeah, I've just studied this for the last 10 years. I got home from that experience 10 years ago. When I was doing my PhD at Clemson University in South Carolina, my wife and I became foster parents of 3 kids. We fought the foster system for 3 years and were able to adopt those kids. That was a crazy journey. And then literally a month after my wife and I adopted our kids, she got pregnant with twins. So we had three adopted kids and 2 twins in 2018. And now here we are, man. We live in Florida. My wife's actually pregnant with our 6th. And wow. I'm just continuing to study, man, just continuing to learn and try to figure out as much as I can so that hopefully I can communicate and serve and help people to, move their lives forward.
Right. Well, something you just touched on a second ago is the ability to serve. And I think when you went on that mission, it sounds like you obviously helped those people, but it also helped yourself in that by getting into a mindset of service, you're able to help those folks out and I guess find your own meaning, it sounds like, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have to have something to give your life meaning, and helping other people is very meaningful. And yeah, I mean, I think that that's a great thing to do. I mean, it's nice when it stops being so much about you. I mean, obviously I love my life. I love seeking success. I like creating a great life for me and my kids, but it's also really nice that you can choose work that's helpful.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know that in Willpower Doesn't Work, you put a great emphasis on how you can't just wish your way into a bunch of different things. One of the things you also touch on is changing your environment, right? Or trying to, I guess, up the ante, so to speak, in one's personal life. Would you say that that's probably one of the biggest things you've realized on your own, or was that through your studies in psychology? Like, and how'd you create your information around it?
I mean, I would say both through my own experience and then through lots of research and through just lots of observation. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I wrote Willpower Doesn't Work because my younger brother, who's currently in a treatment facility here, who's a great dude, you know? And by the way, just for everyone listening, like my dad's no longer a drug addict. He overcame all that stuff like a decade ago, and he's seriously one of my heroes. He's an incredible guy. But yeah, I mean, it's not enough just to want to be successful or to wish. You actually literally have to make changes in your external world to support that. You know, if your environment doesn't support your future self or the goals that you're pursuing, you're not going to do it. If you're, you know, I like to quote, what got you here won't get you there, you know? So like, I mean, I literally am in the midst of having to make a tough decision to like fire, in a sense, not someone on my team, like my actual employees, but like someone who's been in an important business relationship for a few years, because literally my goals are too far beyond this person now. And so, yeah, you have to be aware of environment. I mean, there's two quotes that really come to my mind. One is from Marshall Goldsmith. He said, if we do not create and control our environment creates and controls us. And then the other one is from Zig Ziglar. And he said, your input shapes your outlook, and your outlook shapes your output. And your output obviously shapes your future. And so your input is everything coming in from information, food, friends. And so, yeah, I mean, all that stuff shapes who you are as a person. And so if you become a conscious human being where you want to create a specific future, you've got to be really aware and create the environment that will help you get there, or else you'll never get there.
That's right. And it's funny because in our coaching, we try to say the same thing. We also try the vision board. We try journaling,
yeah,
like you mentioned earlier,
smart,
which is huge,
smart.
huge. It's huge. But I think many people, what they'll do is they'll say, well, it's just how I am. The Myers-Briggs says that I am an ISTJ, so I can't talk to anybody. A lot of that goes on. Now, why is all that stuff, like, why is it just plain wrong?
A lot of reasons. I mean, it's fundamentally negative, obviously, for a person's identity. So like, I'll break this down. Identity and personality are two different things. Identity is how you self-define. You know, if you say I'm an INTJ, that actually says more about your identity than it says about your personality. Because your identity is how you describe yourself. And it's fundamentally way more important than personality. Personality is how you consistently show up in situations. And your personality is the byproduct of your identity. So, you know, most people, they're not very conscious of how they define and describe themselves. Often we define ourselves based on former experiences or based on just what a personality test tells us. Tests like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram Disc, any type of test that throws people into like clear-cut categories or labels, gives them a type. None of those tests are good science. That's not how psychologists view personality. Personality is a lot more nuanced than that. But these tests they're bad science. They're poorly constructed. They're non-valid. But the major problem with them is that they do give people an identity. And that's actually the reason people love them, is because they give people some aha moments that they didn't have before about who they think they are. And then they have an identity that they can describe themselves. I'm a D on the disc, or I'm an INTJ, or however they want to describe themselves. But what that ends up doing is a lot of stuff. It stops you from noticing all the times when the label isn't correct. And there will be many, because labels create tunnel vision. They lead you to, like, I don't know if you've heard the quote from Stephen Covey. Covey said, we don't see the world as it is, but we see the world as we are. Mm-hmm. You know, and so we see the world through our identity. And so we're only aware, and this is what journaling is all about as well, is training your brain what to be aware of. But when you have a label, then you only become aware of the label. So there's a lot of research on like the idea that when people define themselves as depressed, they think that they're always depressed. When like, if you actually looked at them throughout the day, there'd be many occasions when they're actually doing pretty good, but they don't notice those. The major problem, like aside from the idea that like when you have a label, you seek to confirm and defend it. You don't want, you know, if I'm an introvert, I'm going to defend that against, you know, any criticism. And so it leads you to seeing your future self as the same person you are today. If I'm super definitive in who I am today, then it leads me to thinking that I'm going to be that same person in the future. which is inaccurate. And it's basically what's called a fixed mindset. It stops you from seeing potential in your future that's beyond where you're at right now. And so you just think this is who I'm always going to be, which is a terrible view for your future self.
Yeah. Well, that's in that you're referencing Carol Dweck's work, right?
Yep, big time.
Her last name, right? So making the shift to the growth mindset, of course, we talked about journaling, but I still think that for many people, they have the potential to get into that growth mindset. A lot of it's held back by their own limiting beliefs, right? I mean, maybe it's some things that society says, perhaps. I'm not sure. I mean, what are your general thoughts around
that? Most of it has to do with their identity, which is how they've defined and described themselves. And we see the world through the perspective of our identity. You know, so if you view yourself as a happy person, you're probably going to see the world as a more happy place. But our identity is often a reaction to life events, often traumatic experiences. You know, and trauma can be big or small. It could be that you failed a math test, as an example, or someone told you were ugly and you believed it. And so basically with a fixed mindset, what Carol Dweck shows is that negative events occur and people with a fixed mindset don't have a way of, basically they define themselves based on where they're at right now. So if you fail a math test, for example, then that means you're dumb and you're never going to be able to get better. Whereas people with a growth mindset, they're like, I can get better. Even though I failed this test, I can get better. They're defined by the future. And there's ways that you can get out of a fixed mindset. Plenty of ways. Yeah. One is actually talking to people about some of the crap you've gone through. Like just being open and honest about, this is the stuff that I've been through. This is how I've define myself. I mean, and one really easy thing to do is literally just look at your life, look at your daily behavior, look at all the things you're doing on a daily basis and ask yourself, why am I doing these things? You know, like, why did I choose this job? Why am I in this relationship? Like literally just look at your life and how much time you might spend on social media and stuff. And just like genuinely ask yourself, why am I doing all these things? You know, and what does these activities have to do with my future? And if you don't have an answer for that, then what that means is that you haven't clearly defined a future self. And so, a next step would be, aside from like examining your life and like being open and honest about your former experiences, which takes courage, you need to actually take the time to imagine a future self that's beyond where you're currently at. Even if you don't believe it right now, just asking yourself, what would I actually want if I could have it? And then starting to tell people, this is what I would want, admitting that you want a different life. I mean, that's what addicts have to do. Addicts, when they're actually ready to change, they have to say, I don't want to be in this situation anymore. I want a better life. You know, you have to admit what you want. And that I think takes courage for people. A lot of people, they don't want to tell people what they want because it's a lot easier to just say, this is who I am. Because if you tell people this is who I am, you don't have to be required to change. There's no chance of failure, you know, but if you're saying this is what I really want, then you've put yourself in a position of risk where there's potential for failure and people have too big of egos for that. Yeah.
Well, you know, what's funny is that I'm actually reading or listening to a book on how to become an emperor. And it's centered around, but it's centered around stoicism. But it's funny how what you just described sounds very similar to the concept of becoming a good stoic, is to question every single thing you're doing throughout the day. Where does it support what you're looking to become? Right. And it's
interesting. Yeah. So they ask you to do that?
Oh yeah. I'll send you a copy. I'll send it to you. You're going to love it.
What's crazy about that is a lot of people don't realize this, but every behavior we do as people is goal focused. It's outcome seeking. So like even just going to the grocery store is a goal driven behavior. The goal is whatever the outcome is, to get groceries in your house, going to the gas station, going to the bathroom. Every behavior we do as people is driven by an outcome. And our identity is based on the outcomes we're seeking. So for some people, the outcome is literally just to get through the day or to get through the paycheck. And so you've got to ask yourself, why am I choosing these outcomes? Why am I seeking these behaviors? And then you just choose different and better outcomes because the goal is what shapes the process. And so choose a better goal. There's a quote from Dan Sullivan where he says, the only way to make your present better is by making your future bigger. You know, like you have to choose different and better outcomes. And the only way to do that is to question the outcomes you're currently seeking.
Yeah. But you know what, though, I believe that the reason why they don't is just one major thing holding them back. It's usually fear. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, and it didn't really, I couldn't really attack some of those things that we talked about in the green room before, because it was my own fear holding me back. Oh my God, I need a 40-hour job. If I don't have a 40-hour job, I'm a failure. If I'm not at the C level, I'm a failure. You know, that's kind of stuff that kept on bouncing around in my head. Now, none of that stuff matters anymore. Right now, it's all about.
So how did you let all that stuff go?
Well, it took a lot of trauma, that's for sure. that's basically how it's done, right? It's all through a lot of trauma, a lot of bad stuff happening. And that's basically how I did it. I mean, it took going through a lot of things that probably would have been unnecessary. Yeah.
So you went through a lot of crap that ultimately led you to realizing none of the freaking statuses and identities that I'm attaching myself to matter. I'm going to actually just pursue what I really want.
Exactly. But even more important than that, on top of that, it was more like when you realize what you're capable of as well, then you realize there is no limit. Like we would think that the sky's the limit. No, it's actually beyond the sky. And it's crazy. There was a time in my life when, oh yeah, if I can make $300,000 a year as an executive, oh, that'd be a great year. But when you realize that those limitations, I mean, if we're tying it to money here, we're all capable of doing much more than that. It's actually just it's just a small piece of what we're able to do. But I think it's a lot of it's fear, right? I mean, would you say that fear is one of those things that are really holding people back, and how do they overcome that? I mean, that's probably one of the biggest powerful things, right?
Yeah, I think it's several things, but one would be lack of actual imagination. Like, so Daniel Gilbert, he's a Harvard psychologist. He gave a TED Talk called The Psychology of Your Future Self. Recommend it to everyone and always. But, you know, one of the things he says in that TED Talk is that a problem with people is that they don't, a problem with why people can't predict their future is because they don't spend time imagining it. Instead, we spend more of our time remembering the past. So imagination is crucial. Imagination gets kind of crippled by trauma unless you actively resolve it. You need hope, and you need to imagine a future. And so imagination is one, and just actually thinking about what you want. Like one of the things that Viktor Frankl did say, which I love, and I'm just going to actually share this quote, but I don't have the link open. Basically what he said is that, here we go. I got it. This is a Frankl quote, but I think that this is what people miss, is that people think that they have to discover this thing. They have to discover their purpose. Here's what Frankl said. He said, what man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. And I think that that's really the key, is that whatever your future self is, or whatever your goal is, first you have to imagine what it would be like. Second off, you have to just choose it. Like, it's not like you find a future self, you choose who you want to be in the future. And that takes just saying, this is what I want, and then openly admitting it. So I think a problem is, aside from imagination, it's actually uncertainty. Uncertainty is really the foundation of fear. The reason people don't like uncertainty is because we really like to be able to predict the outcomes of our behavior. And our brain is even literally wired to predict our behavior. That's why we form memories in many ways. And so it's a lot easier just to be in a stable situation. I mean, they even say, there's a lot even said to the idea that people stay in addictions even when they know the addiction is killing them, because at least it's something that they've gotten to the point where they can predict what's going to happen. It's it's predictable. And so when you step out of your comfort zone, when you're pursuing big goals, you're putting yourself into a place of uncertainty where there's potential for failure. You don't know exactly how things are going to work out. You're in new situations. You've got to figure new things out. And as people get older, they prefer not to do that, even at the expense of having a great life. Kids are required to do that because it's literally required. They don't know enough. And so they're forced to do it. I mean, our two twins, as an example, they're awesome, by the way. I mean, we're having them take swimming lessons. They're getting really good now, but for the first few months, they hated it. I mean, throwing them in the pool and having them figure out how to swim, and they were crying and hating it. And, they were required to do that because at 18 months old, we forced them to. But how many people actually choose to put themselves in situations like that where they're forced to learn at such a high level? People, as they get older, they just prefer the stability of mediocrity.
Well, you know what? It's funny because there's a lot to unpack there. So one of the things is certainty. My approach, that's probably one of the biggest things to answer your previous question too, is that now that the way I look at things today is I've already owned 20,000 units. I'm just going to go out there and make it official, right? That's I got to get out there and put my name on it now. So in my mind,
That's pretty awesome. Well, yeah, that's you being really clear and honest about your future self.
Right. I've already committed to it. To it. And we talked some of the big deals one big deal that I'm working on right now. I can't really disclose it just yet because it's not closed, but for some of the listeners out there, some of them are aware of it, but it's just going to be one of those game-changing things. And I had to decide that was going to happen, and I was going to stop at nothing to make it happen. But I think that one of those things is that I committed to that future self that I was going to make it. And
you yourself defined it. You chose that number. It's not like you discovered that. You just said, that's a worthwhile goal that I'm just going to pursue. I'm going to strive and struggle in the present to create that goal.
That's right. And I mean, but you know what though? I mean, that took some radical change on my part. Like I went through a lot of stuff to get to that point. Yeah. And like I said, it's not necessary for everyone to be, doing what I had to do to go through all the crap I had to go through. It's not necessary. But what sort of radical change would you recommend for someone else listening out there that wants to get into real estate business or get into whatever it is they want to do? Like, what sort of recommendation do you have for them?
I mean, the first step is honestly just admitting that that's what you want to do. Start telling everyone that that's your goal and that you're going to start doing that. Then you need to start investing some form of capital, like literally in like either a book or like a coach or like an environment. Like you have to start actually investing money because that's how you get committed. But you start telling people that that's what you want and you start to believe it more. You start putting yourself in those environments, actually start studying it, start learning it, and ultimately start taking action in the direction, even if it's just to like literally read a book. I mean, you just have to start actually exposing yourself to it and start taking action in that direction. And as you tell people about it, as you start learning about it, you'll start to literally identify with it. But you can speed the process by literally just kind of doing what you just did, by just saying, imagining a future of self, maybe in, let's just say a year or two, where you're totally like doing real estate deals. That's your future self for a lot of people listening is they may not have ever done a deal, but maybe in 2 or 3 years, they've got 10 houses or 10 units or whatever. So the question is when are you going to start telling people that that's your goal? When are you going to start admitting that that's what you really want? When are you going to actually start investing some form of money towards that so that you can get yourself in the right environment, get the right coaching, get the right help? Those are just crucial keys.
Well, I know that one of the things that you're really big into is the coaching aspect. And it's not because, we have to spend money to get there, but I think it shows an actual commitment to the process when you're actually putting down something, right?
You have to. Yeah. I mean, there's a concept in psychology called two things. One's called escalation of commitment. The other one's called endowment effect. But basically it's the idea that what you own, you value more, and also you commit to more. So I'm not saying it has to be coaching. It could literally just be if you've got money, freaking buy a house, or whatever it is. But it's very good to get education and mentorship, and it speeds the process if you can get a good one. So I'm all about investing in your goal because that's what commits you to it. And it's also just a really powerful signal to your subconscious that this is something that you're doing. It's what I call a subconscious enhancing experience, where you're literally putting money towards your future rather than spending money towards your past. Like a lot of people, they're just spending money to confirm who they are today versus spending money to confirm who they're going to be in the future. So there's 2 quotes, by the way, I have for you that remind me of what you just said, which is that there's 20,000 units out there. I just have to do it. Yeah. So one is from Neville Goddard. He said, assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. To me, that's what morning journaling is all about is not only do you see it, but you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. The other one is from Florence Shin, and she said, faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. So that's kind of just the key is, you've already received, now you act accordingly. It's kind of that whole be, do, have concept, right? Where you be your future self, act as your future self would have so you could have what your future self would have. That takes a lot of uncertainty. But the cool part about all of this is, and this is the goal. So one of the core basically theories of psychology is that this is for the majority of people. The best way to predict a person's future behavior is simply by looking at their past. For most people, that's the sad truth, is that most people are literally acting out their past every day. The goal is that that's not you. The goal is that your future self is the thing predicting your daily behavior. You've clarified who your future self is. Now you're literally using your goal as the basis for your intentional decision-making in somewhat risk-taking to some degree today. Your future is the thing driving your daily behavior, not your past. That's the goal. That's how you live intentionally. That's how you live courageously. That's how you experience a lot of failure, but that's also how you become more flexible and confident as a person.
That's right. Well, your future is pulling you as opposed to pushing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. Yes. When every morning when I'm writing out my affirmations and my journaling, it's more than just a passive, oh, I'm just going to write this out. It's more like you write the sentence. I actually close my eyes and I picture myself in that villa
Situation.
looking out. Oh yeah, I'm in that situation. I'm there. I'm already there.
Dude, it's awesome to do, isn't it?
Dude, it's
you need to do it,
and you can't. Yeah, it's so hard to convey. It's so hard
well,
to convey to people. It works, but it works.
Well, you know, it's crazy. So Gordon Livingston, he's a famous psychiatrist. He's gone now, but he said that happiness requires three things: something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to. You need something to look forward to be happy. You need anticipation. You need hope. Without those things, your present becomes meaningless. And so if you can't imagine yourself in that villa or that exact situation, then what the heck are you doing in the present? Like, you have no direction for what to do. And so if you can, you know, this is imagination, but you can get better and better at it. You practice it. It becomes really fun to actually watch and witness as prior visualizations occur. And this is, again, why journaling can be so powerful, is because you can go back and read old journals and you can realize, holy cow, the future self that I was projecting back then was beyond, and it's behind where I'm at now. You know what I mean? Like, I've already achieved that and way more. And you can, you know, your confidence builds so that you can create bigger futures. And, you know, that's how you can ultimately make decisions and build confidence, and then go through the process of creating stuff in your life. And that's a joyful experience. It's a very satisfying experience too, to look back and to watch and say, holy cow, look what I did. And what's cool from the growth mindset versus fixed mindset perspective, you and I are ordinary people. Like, there's nothing uniquely special about us. And that's how people with the growth mindset feel about themselves, is that it's not like one person's got it and everyone else doesn't. It's just that you've chosen to invest in your future and to believe in your future rather than to be defined by the present.
That's right. But you know, it's funny, just to
Sure.
reiterate something you said, what I'll do is I'll take a snapshot of what I write in my journal and in my affirmations, and I'll just put it in Google Docs, and I'll leave it there. And then I'll stumble on it a year or two later, and I'll see it. I'm like, oh my God, that was it. I hit that goal a long time ago. It's just funny. I don't know why. I think it's personally hilarious when I see an old goal and you know, like, crush it. But you've come so far from that goal. It makes you feel like you've just done, I don't know, just, it makes you feel good when you see that, right? That you're able to hit it and just move on. Just like you said about that quote, same thing. Thing.
There's a good quote from Alain de Botton. He's a British philosopher, but he said, if you're not embarrassed by who you were 12 months ago, you didn't learn enough.
That's right.
And, you know, I don't think you actually have to be truly embarrassed. I think you should just be able to see that, holy cow, like, I'm in a different place. In fact, you should actually just have empathy and love and compassion towards your former self, and recognize that they were doing absolutely everything they could with their situation, just like you are right now. But it's really good to see that your former self is a different person than you are today. They're not the same person. They've got different information, different perspectives, different goals, a different identity to many degrees, different habits. And that same concept should be projected towards your future self. You should view your future self as a different person. They're going to have different perspectives, situation, environment, habits, goals, priorities. You know, me, myself, like, my goals and priorities are totally different even than what they were a year ago, because I'm clarifying, and crazy stuff like COVID happens. And so that's why, again, labels and things like that from Myers-Briggs, but also the fixed mindset's just useless, because it places all the emphasis on the present, and it overly defines your present self. And it makes you think that who you are right now is the be all end all, when the truth is you're not the same person you were in the past, and your future self is going to be different. Even if you do nothing about it, you're going to change in the future. And so you might as well get super intentional and imaginative about the person you want to be, and then get really strategic about becoming that person. And then you're going to watch as you can evolve. And so, yeah, that's why, you know, don't be so obsessed about who you are today. We would actually call it, be a little bit more loose in how you hold your current identity. Your identity should be based on your future self. That should be the new story that you should be telling people, is this is what you're up to, this is what you're doing, rather than saying this is who I am.
That's right. Yes. Well, and that's what goes into your new book that's coming out here fairly soon. Personality isn't permanent. So And it's the same sort of concept. I mean, who you were a year ago is not who you are today, but you can shape that and you can form that to become, to build on the personality that you currently have today and keep on pushing for what you really want to see. Correct?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And their identity is a byproduct. Personality. Personality is a byproduct. Personality is just how you consistently show up in the world. Whether you're a happy person, whether you're good with relationships, whether you're organized, whether you're creative, those things just come from how you saw yourself before. You choose to define your identity. And so that's why you would want to do it based on your future self, because your identity, should shape your story. And the story is the thing that you tell about. And then that's what shapes your behavior. Because if you start telling people you want to start investing in real estate, as an example, and you don't do anything for a year, people are gonna be like, dude, why do you keep telling us you're gonna do real estate and you're not doing anything about it? Like when you start telling people what you want to do, you start feeling more compelled to do it. You feel more accountable to your words. And so if you start telling people about your goals, yes, you're putting yourself in slightly a risky situation because there's a potential chance you might fail, but you're also at the same time putting yourself in a situation where you're being forced to rise up to your new story. And that's exactly what, Will Durant said. He said the ability of the average person could be doubled if the situation demanded it. And so it's your job to literally create a situation that demands you to rise to your new words. Like, I'm going to do this. And then you start investing in it. You put yourself in a situation where it's like, I got to do this now. That's how productive people put themselves in a situation. I call it forcing functions, but you put yourself in a situation that forces you to move the direction you want to go rather than staying in situations that justify where you're at.
Excellent. And Will Durant's a great author, by the way.
He's cool, listening, isn't
he? You guys got to check out that work. I mean, it's long.
Have you read it?
I tried. I mean, I have the whole collection in paper format on my shelf right now. I went out and bought the whole thing, but I have it all in audio as well. If you ever want to listen to it.
Oh man, I've just listened to just the lessons of history. It's a short little book. You're going for the whole history lesson, huh?
Yeah, but it's long, man.
You get some good stuff out of it though?
Oh yeah, of course. Oh my God. It's very, very rich, very detailed. I mean, obviously so Will Durant out there, guys, great author. He's passed away. Obviously he's not around anymore, but he started creating these volumes of the history of humanity, basically. And then later on with his wife, and I think he won was a Pulitzer, I think, right? I believe in one.
I think they did. Yeah.
Amazing work. But so much, so much in there. Now, what is that one thing that someone can do that they can, that can make that change happen? I mean, I'm sure many of our listeners have heard me talk about it a bunch of times: journaling and writing and affirmations, doing it first thing in the morning when the mind is most open. That's when I do it. What is the thing that you say?
It's really big. Well, I mean, all those things are big because they put you in an intentional state at the beginning of the day, and momentum gets created almost immediately in the day. And so why would you start in a reactive state with negative momentum where you're living basically unconsciously throughout the day? So starting in the right environment with your journal, towards affirmations, towards your future self, that puts you in an intentional state where you're actually working towards your future rather than just repeating the past. So that makes a lot of sense. And so, yeah, for me, first step, I actually will steal it. I'll say there's two. One is about reframing the past, which is being a lot more open and honest about your most painful experiences. People often, they keep, there's a good quote in Alcoholics Anonymous that you're as sick as your secrets. You know what I mean? Like, all progress starts by telling the truth, so you got to just start opening up and being honest about what's gone on in your life. And you'll come to realize that you can actually reshape the meaning of those former experiences. Just as one example, like, I don't see any of the negative experiences I've had in the past as bad things. Even my father becoming a drug, all of that stuff I view as it's all the best thing that could have happened to me. If all that stuff didn't happen, I wouldn't have gone on that mission and had incredible experiences. I wouldn't have, so I'm purposefully choosing to view it. And we are meaning-making machines. And so we choose the meaning of our experiences, choosing the meaning of COVID, choosing the meaning of all these crazy riots. Like, you choose the meaning of what's going on. And that's true in your past as well. And so you might as well choose the meanings that will propel your future forward rather than choosing meanings that debilitate you. Like, I'm bad at math, as one example. Like, why? That's a meaning. It's not a fact. So choosing better meanings for your former experiences, which requires the courage to talk about them and to potentially journal about them. Second one would be clarify your future self. And that's an ongoing process. Like, that's something you do daily, right? But clarify your future self, and then have the courage to start telling people about that. And then build a process like you've got where you're writing about it daily, affirming it, investing in it, building an environment around it, no longer being ashamed of what you want, just admitting it and telling people about that. And then putting yourself in a position where that's the only option.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and this is by no means easy. That's the thing. I mean, it takes time. I think most people just think that I'll just,
but you build confidence along the way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It takes time. I mean, it took me years to get into that mindset, you know?
Dude. And you will have failures, and I'll have failures that will test it in the future and will either strengthen it or cripple it, you know? But, what's nice is that if you're working through it, then failures can actually push it forward, you know, because then you can get increasingly committed to it. And sometimes those hard failures can really confirm to you that this is what you want to do. And you actually need those to build confidence. And so it becomes worth it. But by the way, you know, a lot of the research on grit, as an example, you can't actually be gritty without hope in the future. Like there'd be no reason to like grit through and like do hard things if you didn't have hope that it would be worth it. So you need that future self. And so you might as well just start working at it and get that hope and that anticipation going so that you can be gritty, so that you can have confidence. So yeah, it's crucial. And it's a skill that we can all develop.
Absolutely. 100%. And then see it as a certainty. You know, I look at it as it's going to happen. It will happen. It has happened. I'm just going to go make it official.
Yeah. I love that, dude. Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. All right, guys, if you want to reach out to Benjamin, you can reach him via his website at benjaminhardy.com. I hope you're able to see what is possible for you. I think every single person out there listening has greatness within them. So don't forget to head over to Benjamin's website. And for a limited time, you get 3 of his courses for free with each pre-order of his book. All right. So check that out. All right. So take care, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast.